Lisa, we've got it. Okay, it looks like we're good to go. So thank you all again. We are going to go into what is lunch at the library. For many families, the stability, nutrition, and education provided during the school year ends when school lets out for summer. During the summer months, kids and teens and low-income families often have reduced or limited access to healthy food. The Lunch at the Library program exists to help meet this need while providing enrichment and wraparound services available through the library and in the community. Lunch at the Library is a California State Library program which provides grants, training, resources, and technical assistance to help public libraries establish and sustain successful summer USDA meal sites at their library or take enrichment services to community USDA meal sites. These community meal sites can vary, and they might be schools, local parks, or boys and girls clubs. Lunch at the Library grants are in place to support and enhance summer meals provided or reimbursed by USDA throughout the state. Funding for Lunch at the Library is provided by the California state budget, which provides $5.486 million annually. A new aspect of Lunch at the Library this year is the creation of an ongoing Communities of Practice, or COPs for short, for all grantees. So our goal for this new aspect is to create a community in which we can discuss our challenges, successes, brainstorm together, and a place in which we can ask questions. Most Lunch at the Library grantees participate yearly and have expressed that we do not have a shared space in which to meet regularly, to have conversations and gain support. We hope these communities of practice gatherings allow grantees to meet, and our COP gathering details will be provided later on. They will begin in February, precisely February 1st, along with the beginning of our grant period, and you can expect to receive a full schedule when grants are allocated. I'm now going to pass it to Rachel to talk about the next steps and how eligibility for this grant is determined.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Kayla. So as Kayla mentioned, the Lunch at the Library program is run in conjunction with the USDA summer meals programs. Libraries can partner with local USDA meal sponsors to provide lunches at their locations, or they can take their library services and enrichment activities to local sites. For new libraries interested in becoming a summer meal site, the first step will be checking if you are eligible to serve meals through the USDA program. Libraries can be eligible to be a USDA summer meal site if they meet either of the following two criteria that are listed on the screen. This would be you have 50% or more students in your library school district that receive free and reduced priced meals based on the California Department of Education's most recent data, or your library is within a census block group in which at least 50% of students are eligible for free or reduced price lunches. The USDA area eligibility map is available for you to view your status. And I'm going to be putting all these links in the chat, so don't feel like you have to try and grab them. You'll also be getting the slides at the end of this program. So once you've established whether or not you're eligible, or if you find that you're not, you can access the California Department of Education Summer Meal Service Sites webpage. This webpage will list the most recent information on the summer meal sites in your area. It will also give you information on the meal sponsor who is providing the meals, the contact information for that meal sponsor, the location, and the site type, whether it's open or closed, which Kayla's going to cover in a little bit. You can use this contact information to reach out to possible meal sponsors for your Lunch at the Library meal site, or to view possible community sites that you could bring pop-up services to. Please note that this information is from the California Department of Education, so it will often be school districts that are listed, but there are other community organizations that work as meal sponsors, such as Boys and Girls Clubs, food banks, United Way, and other local organizations. These are the basics of determining eligibility and finding a meal sponsor, just for your general information, but please do not think you are alone in this. The Lunch at the Library team is more than happy and willing to work with you and your partners at any step in the process to help determine eligibility, find a meal sponsor, meet with your meal sponsors to try and figure out how this will work with your local partners, answer questions, or provide support during the application and grant period. Please contact us for any assistance. We are always here to help. And I'm going to pass it back to Kayla.
Thanks, Rachel. So I just want to repeat the total grant amount for lunch at the library is a sustained $5.486 million. I just want to let that sink in. It's a lot of money. So the largest amount of this funding is going to be distributed through the core program opportunity. And any remaining funds will be available for an additional competitive innovation grant supporting newer innovative ideas to further feeding more families, which Rachel will introduce in just a few minutes. All libraries which apply for lunch at the library and have plans to host or visit summer USDA meal sites will receive funding for the core program. Funding for lunch at the library will be ongoing and sustained based on the previous summer's outputs, and amounts will be dependable for libraries. So you can plan to incorporate lunch at the library as an ongoing annual program funded by the state library. Outputs will include the number of meal or pop-up sites libraries conducted, the quantity of meals served, the number of meal service days, and youth development participation rate. Collecting and reporting accurate outputs is important to ensure you receive adequate and accurate funding. Creating funding amounts which you can count on receiving annually, we hope, will embed lunch at the library as a regular library service throughout the state. The year-long project period allows libraries to secure staffing support needed to build community partnerships, plan, and commit to an ongoing lunch at the library program. For example, when appropriate, funding can support dedicated year-round staff. Jurisdictions new to lunch at the library and those that are expanding to include new meal sites will receive additional funding to assist with startup costs and encourage growth. Okay, so what do we mean when we talk about lunch at the library core program? The core program of lunch at the library is the fundamental and foundational piece to the grant. This is where the grant began and where we continue to focus our main efforts. Libraries participate by either 1, establishing their library as a meal site, 2, taking library services and enrichment activities out to community meal sites, serving as a USDA meal site, or 3, a combination of both library meal sites and visiting community meal sites. When locating a nearby meal site, you may encounter both closed and open sites, as Rachel mentioned. Closed sites would be considered those in which registration or signups are required for youth to attend and receive lunches. Open sites are those in which any community member under the age of 18 can access a free lunch. We do encourage libraries to focus visits on open sites, as research clearly shows that enrichment at these community meal sites will increase the number of youths receiving meals. We do understand that in some communities, there may only be an option to visit a closed site. And if you have any questions about this, as always, please reach out to our team. There are 2 additional key components that are now incorporated into the core program, which will be familiar for those returning grantees. These are youth development and farm to summer. Rachel is going to first review the youth development component.
All right, thanks, Kayla. So the youth development portion of the core program is a vital but optional part of the Lunch at the Library program that helps teens build workforce readiness skills during the summer. Libraries that are interested in creating a youth development program as part of their Lunch at the Library can hire teen interns or recruit teen volunteers to support their program. Teens can be used to perform tasks like setting up and taking down a program, creating and facilitating crafts or enrichment activities, serving food, maintaining statistics like attendance or books provided, distributing outcome surveys, and other items that might support your Lunch at the Library program. We often hear from libraries that teen interns are an important part of their library's success for the program, and that they are able to assign tasks to their teen interns and volunteers that would otherwise fall on their regular staffing. They also note that it is very impactful to see their teens gain their first working skills and gain confidence over the summer. So it's really such a fun and exciting part of the grant. Libraries that participate will receive an allotted fund amount based on the number of teen volunteer hours that they reported on the previous year. Funds can be used for teen salaries and scholarships, staff hours for youth development, such as when you're organizing a teen training and skill building, or if you're supervising the teens during the lunch program, food handlers courses and certification for your teens, training or training materials to build workforce readiness skills, including leadership, resume writing, program facilitation, and team building. or anything that's going to hit that mark of helping our teams build those workforce skills while working the Lunch at the Library program. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kayla to talk about Farm to Summer.
Thank you, Rachel. Now, all grants are now expected to include farm to summer elements. Libraries should include at least one farm to summer program or element which fit your community best in connecting families with locally grown healthy food, farms, and local meal sites. These programs should run alongside your summer meals to provide enrichment and wraparound services. Some examples of farm to summer elements would be hosting a local farmer at your library to discuss what they grow and how it's grown, creating a garden at the library to grow food and host programming or summer lunches, creating a storytime series about healthy eating, sharing recipes, and connecting families to local meal sites, or hosting food demonstrations with master food preservers or master gardeners. There are so many ways you can incorporate farm to summer, and these are just a few quick examples to get you started thinking. Funding for this enhancement is included in the total core funding amount your library will receive. Rachel will now talk about how you can take this idea or others even further with the competitive innovation grant component.
All right. So for those libraries interested in going even further with their Lunch at the Library program, we have the Innovation Grant Opportunity. These funds support libraries in implementing innovative and often large-scale efforts to connect more children, teens, and families with nutritious meals during the summer. Funded projects go above and beyond the Lunch at the Library core program activities. We ask that you think big and be creative as you're thinking of your plans to connect your communities to nutritious meals during the summer. Funding in this category is competitive and based on your requested need. There is no set amount or cap, but please be realistic in considering what you need to successfully manage your innovation project plans. And on the next slide, we're going to talk about some possible ideas. So possible ideas could include working with a food pantry to increase the impact of your program, transportation or vehicle options that connect more families to food over the summer, large-scale awareness-raising campaigns to increase attendance at your Lunch at the Library meal sites, and that could be countywide advertising on a large scale, such as bus wraps, bench ads, paid radio advertising, pre-movie advertising, or more. Or you could create a food coalition in your community. You should note that the last year's grant opportunity featured a libraries as conveners category, which is no longer available. But we believe these same efforts fall well into the innovation opportunity, which is why we're bringing it up here. Also, I want to say these are just some ideas to get you thinking, but please note that this is not the end of the list. As I said above, we ask that you be creative, think big, and develop plans that are going to work well for your community. And if you have questions about your idea or want to just talk it out with us, just please ask. We're happy to help you out. And now I'm going to pass it on to Lisa to talk about the nitty-gritty parts of the application.
All right. So first, I just want to review the overall timeline for what's ahead. The opportunity opened a few weeks ago, and it closes November 29th at noon. We will make notifications, and that means you'll get your final funding amount in January. And then once you have your final funding amount, that is the stage where you will submit your budget. So we do have a quick turnaround for that part because you need your budget in order for the project period to begin. And the project period begins February 1st, 2024 and ends January 31st, 2025. So at that point, this will more or less be the schedule we stay on, and you will have your funding go from year to year. I'm going to go ahead and go over the application. Those of you that have applied in the past, it's going to be a very, very similar process. Everyone will need to create a profile, even if you have used the same profile for the last 2 years. This year, it will be a new profile. Just a couple of questions on that step where you say what jurisdiction you're with and what county you're in. And then once you're at the stage where you're completing the different parts, there'll be 4 parts this year. The basic information is, again, the information about the contact for the program and things like that. The core program is where you will describe how many meal sites you're going to do. You'll tell us if you're going to be doing pop-up programming. And please note, at this stage, since we're having the application open so early, you don't have to know where your pop-up sites are going to be or how many pop-up sites. You don't have to know what your youth development program is going to look like. And then step 3, if you're not doing the innovation, that'll just be quick, just mark that you're not doing innovation. If you are, then of course that's a more lengthy process. And then of course the last step is the paying organization certification, the form that you have your authorized representative upload. Once you've done all those 4 steps, you simply hit submit and you're ready to go. So I mentioned that the budget will happen after you get your funding amount, but I do want to go ahead and get you guys thinking about things you're going to be putting into your budget. So I want to first just kind of review the unallowable expenditures and the allowable expenditures. And I do want to emphasize that some of this is different this year. And so just need everyone to hear me out, and we will welcome questions at the end. But on our unallowable expenditures list, we include performers for the purpose of entertainment. So the counterpart to that is we do allow presentations offering enrichment. So just remember that how you describe your presentations, how you plan them, it needs to be about offering enrichment for the attendees. So that includes both how you speak about it in your narrative and how you describe it on your budget. Additionally, all giveaways, including take and make kits, are an unallowable expenditure. And I know take and make kits have been a large component for some libraries for the last several years. So I do want to explain. Giveaways are not an allowable thing for state funds. And if you think about how, you know, all of us pay taxes in California, we want our money to be going to good use when we pay our taxes. So it makes sense that the state of California doesn't allow us to just give away tax funds. During the pandemic, there was all sorts of exceptions to what we knew as normal. Programming couldn't happen on site. We couldn't have presentations. And so take and make kits kind of became the norm because that was the only way to support youth. Now that we are not doing waivers, we're not in those conditions anymore. We are back to basically needing to follow the state rules as they have always been, which includes no giveaways. So again, I know that's different, and we do want to make sure we message that. In terms of no giveaways, that also means we can't have giveaway books. So I just want to emphasize books are still allowed, but they need to be books to build home libraries. And there's a little bit more that needs to go with it than just, we're giving away books. So I'll touch on that in just a minute. Food and refreshments are not an allowable expense. We do allow you to purchase food items if they're used to go hand in hand with the education presentations that I mentioned earlier. And just to give a quick example, if you were just, we're going to provide pizza to the parents because the kids are getting lunch, that's using the money for purchasing food, that's not allowed. On the other hand, if you were to make guacamole and everybody got to taste the guacamole and the kids left with the recipe, knowing how to make guacamole, maybe you had a food box donated from the food bank that had the items that they could make it at home. Of course, you would have to you'd have to purchase food to do that program. But the purpose of the program wasn't to come get the free food. The purpose of the program was to learn about how to cook. So that distinction is important when you're thinking about, is this an allowable expense or not? And then, as always, stipends are not an allowable expense. Again, that kind of goes back to, we're usually dealing with teenagers and small amounts, but it is giving away money, basically. So we don't give away state money. That makes sense. So we do allow, of course, youth to be hired to staff, and that means they're paid for their time, just like any employee. And we do allow scholarships. If you are, doing a scholarship, that is different than a stipend. But there's more on that on the application page as well. So I just want to touch a little bit more on books. So Kayla touched a little bit about, the core program is what's at the heart. And those of you that have been doing this a long time know that providing books to build home libraries is really core to what Lunch at the Library is about. So I want to emphasize that we absolutely want you to still do that, but there are some instructions that go with it that were not the case previously. So grant-funded books must include literature connecting families to summer reading. So that means, include an insert that tells them about how to register for summer at your library, or maybe include the reading log, whatever makes sense. And then they also need to have a California State Library funding statement on the inside cover. So that can be a stamp, it can be a sticker. We'll support you in making sure you have what you need to put in there. We'll provide a template when the time comes. But again, you need to make sure you're not just, announcing to the community, come to the park on this day and we're giving away books. That's not what we're about. We're about helping connect the kids to the lunch and they leave with the book, but it's not just giving away books. So think of that in terms of how you describe your activities and in how you write your budget. And I do mean in how you actually implement the programs as well. And again, we'll field questions on that at the end if there are any. And I will now pass it over to Rachel.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Lisa. And I just want to acknowledge that I am seeing a lot of questions in the chat. I'm really excited to answer them. Please keep putting them in there. We're just going to make sure we go through all of this information first, and then at the end, we'll be sure to answer all the questions in the chat. So please keep putting them in there. We're just not going to address them until the end of the presentation. Okay, so now we are going to discuss the part that everyone is the most curious about, the funding allocations for the core program. As mentioned before, we have had that recent increase in funding to $5.4 million, and we're working on a way to create a sustained funding model so that you're able to know each year that you will receive around the same funding every year you apply. We created this model based on feedback from library staff members like you working on lunch at the library, as well as people who have wanted to participate but were unable to in the past. We wanted to make sure we were getting all the staff feedback that we could from you guys doing the program. When developing this funding allocation, we wanted to make sure that everyone will have what they need to participate in lunch at the library. So you can consider the funding to be like a big pie that we all have to share and enjoy. Everyone should expect a minimum amount of funds based on your outputs that will be constant. These funds will generally stay the same, and we will go into those numbers on the next slide. A small portion of the funds will fluctuate based on the number of applicants. If we have less people applying, there is more pie left to enjoy. But if we have more people applying, then the pie slices are going to have to be smaller so everyone gets their piece of pie. I do want to note as we go over these slides that this is our first year on the funding formula, and we are all human, even here at the California State Library. So if you see something that seems like a red flag, or if you go through your funding amounts and say that is way too much or too little, please reach out to us for a private meeting after this information session. We want to make sure that this is going to work for everyone and that everyone can succeed in this program. So we do appreciate your feedback. Okay, so now, part everyone has been waiting for. On this slide, you can see how the funding will be broken down based on the outputs that you have been reporting. This will allow you to best plan for your core program budget will entail. Please note that this is just for the core program. Further funding is available through the innovation grant funding. I'm going to give everyone a moment to take their screenshot of the slide so you can refer to it later on to determine your project funding amount. But know for returning grantees, Lisa will be placing, after this presentation, a projected funding amount in the participation survey portion of your WiseHive portal. So as I mentioned, these funds may grow based on certain variables, such as the total number of applicants we receive, but you can at least know at minimum this will be your projected amount. So we've been talking this whole time about having this funding based on your previous year's outputs. So as you can see on the slide, returning grantees, you can expect the following based on what you reported on the participation survey. Library meal sites should expect $300 per day that they did service. So if during the summer you served lunch for a total of 20 days, you can expect $6,000. This is per library meal site. So if you have multiple branches serving as meal sites, then you would add the total number of days for each of those sites. In this example, let's say you have 5 meal sites, each serving meals for 20 days. That would increase your total to $30,000. For pop-up libraries, funding would be allocated at $300 per pop-up location you visit, and an additional $300 for each day you visit that location. So if you went to 3 pop-up locations one time, you would receive $1,200. But if you went to 3 pop-up locations 3 times, you would receive $3,600. I do want to note that it appears that seems like pop-ups might be It might be skewed a little bit more towards pop-ups, but often libraries go to 3 pop-ups or less, whereas library meal sites tend to operate multiple days throughout the summer, and one does have a higher total amount based on the number per day. We try to make things as equitable for grantees as possible so you can keep doing the great work that you are doing. For those libraries doing youth development, you can expect $17 per teen hour reported in order to more closely align with the California minimum wage. For returning grantees that are looking to expand their Lunch at the Library program, they want to include more Lunch at the Library sites, you can expect $350 per planned day of service at that new location. The extra $50 per day is to help with startup costs that you might have in becoming a Lunch at the Library site, such as purchasing tables, tablecloths, refrigeration units, pop tents for shade during your lunch service, any of those items. Then on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that new jurisdictions are going to be a little different. Since if as a new jurisdiction, you would have not returned a participation survey, we are going to allocate funds based on your planned activities. We will also calculate extra funds in order to help with any startup costs that may occur. All new jurisdictions will receive $30,000 to start their program. This would be regardless of whether you're doing pop-up visits or you're a library serving a meal site. For those libraries working as meal sites, you would receive an additional $8,000 and then also $350 for every planned day of service at that library location. All right, next slide, Lisa. All right, on this slide, we have just a few more notes for the core program funding. You should know that no matter your reported outputs or plans, all libraries should expect a minimum of $3,000 for their grant. This is our way of ensuring that you are able to be successful in your programming. That being said, this is the lowest amount you could possibly get. Most likely, you're going to receive more solely based on the numbers I've already discussed. As I said earlier, a small portion of funds will fluctuate based on the number of applicants. These funds would be based on the number of meals you served at your library meal site or the number of meals served at the community meal sites that you visited. Depending on the number of applicants, the number associated with that output could be a smaller funding allocation or a larger funding allocation. Remember, we have to think of that pie. The more people that come to the party, and we of course want a bunch of people at our party, the smaller the pie slice. But this would be, again, in addition to all of those other funding constants that we already covered. And then once more on this slide, I just want to mention that if you are a returning grantee, Lisa will create a projected minimum funding amount in the 2023 portal under your participation survey. When looking at this, remember that that minimum amount may increase once we finalize our total number of applicants and the slice of pie. We get to determine that slice of pie. But look at that minimum and you can start to determine what your budget's going to look like and start figuring those things out. Again, if you find you have questions because this funding amount seems off to you, either because it is too big or too little, please reach out to us for a meeting and we would love to discuss that with you. This is our first year, but we are hoping this will work well for everyone. And if you're a new grantee and want some help figuring out what that funds will look like, just reach out. We're always happy to talk. And now I'm going to pass it off to Carrie and Trish to talk about an exciting new opportunity.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm Trish. First, Lisa, Rachel, and Kayla, thanks for including us today. And we did want to tell you a little bit about California Library Association's Lunch at the Library Partner Project grant opportunity. Partner project grants can support all of the same types of meal programming and enrichment activities that Lisa, Rachel, and Kayla just outlined. So meal sites and enrichment programming, nutrition and food education, home library building tied to programming, pop-up programming and partnerships. But the difference with this grant opportunity is that through the partner project, funds are available to support these activities during the fall, winter, and spring. We know that summertime is the time of year with the greatest food insecurity, but we also know that a lot of summer meal sites go underutilized. So there's a real thinking that as libraries establish themselves as a place where families know they can get food and nutrition resources year round, and it really provides libraries the opportunity to promote summer meals throughout the year and subsequently lead to increased attendance at the much needed summer meal programs and food distribution sites in your communities. For libraries that are on the call today considering becoming summer meal sites for the first time next summer, and may be interested in testing the waters, considering an after-school snack program over winter or spring might be something you would want to think about and consider applying for funds to support those efforts. Libraries already serving meals that might be interested in expanding nutrition programming to include after-school snacks during fall, winter, and spring, or maybe snacks or meals during winter and spring school breaks. We have funds to support those activities. And then finally, if your library is already offering CACFP breakfast, lunch, or snack services, we have funds available to provide enrichment programming for the activities you may already be doing year-round. So I'm going to hand things over to Carrie, who's going to give you a little information on how and where to apply, and really encourage you to think about kind of starting to create that wraparound year-round connection and support to nutrition and meals in your communities. And I'm going to hand things over to Carrie.
Okay, great. Thank you, Trish. So I just wanted to share with you some details and information for applying for funding to extend your summer meal and nutrition programming and partnerships for fall, winter, and even going into spring. This funding opportunity does support fall and winter activities and programs for 2023 and extends into spring of 2024. The California Library Association's Lunch at the Library Partnership Project has supplemental grant funds available for all interested California public libraries to support meal and nutrition services for children and for youth. Working in partnership with California State Library, Lunch at the Library program, CLA's partner project provides grants to complement State Library's summer lunch and Lunch at the Library activities. To learn more about this opportunity, please take time and visit CLA's Lunch at the Library Partner Project submittable grant application homepage and grant portal. We're also going to place a link to this in the chat. And for this opportunity, the application deadline is February 15th of 2024, and funds must be encumbered by May 15th, 2024. If you have any questions about this funding opportunity, please contact CLA Lunch at the Library project team for more information and with any questions. Thank you so much.
All right. So we're wrapping up things here, but I wanted to say, please, if you are interested in this opportunity, please register for some of our other upcoming programming sessions and office hours. Our next one is on Thursday, September 28th, and we will be hearing from last year's Lunch at the Library participants about their amazing programs, lunch services, and farm to summer and youth development components. This is really good stuff, and I highly suggest you take the time to attend. We're also going to be having an innovation and networking session on October 5th, where you can hear about all the amazing innovation projects that we had last year that have really connected lots of families to food over the summer. We'll have office hours where you can ask us any questions or workshop your application. So we are ready for all of these sessions, and please register. And I'll pass it back to Kayla.
Okay, thank you, Trish and Carrie and Rachel. As you'll see, if you have questions, our email is listed there and our website is listed there. Carrie and Trish, I'm going to go through the questions, and I'm going to start at the top, but there was one for you at the end that I wanted to start with before we have you head out. They're asking about spending for actual food costs, providing snacks, maybe specifically gluten-free and vegetarian meals. Did you two want to answer this? Did you want our team to take it?
I think we could start, and then if you could build on or correct anything we've said, but unfortunately food costs would not be allowable under this grant. We have had situations, and particularly outside of summer, fall, winter, spring. Sometimes someone will be able to find a snack or meal provider, and to really be able to pull the relationship off, there might be some costs, so like delivery costs or some sort of overhead costs. And those we could totally consider covering those costs, but actually funds to purchase food would be unallowable under this grant.
Yeah,
So-
and I'll just add to that, Trish, just for everyone to know that the CLA Partner Project has the same allowables and unallowables that Lisa has went through earlier. So that's an easy way to remember, like, it's the same situation with the take and makes and the food situation.
Okay, thank you. If you have specific questions for Trish and Carrie that you want to workshop, feel free to reach out to them and, you know, brainstorm alongside them. They're happy to kind of talk through everything as well. So I'm going to start with our questions here. So we have a question for requesting funding for a large van. So I think this was input during our innovation portion. Rachel, do you want to talk about vehicle purchases?
Yeah, of course. So I will once again plug our information session that is coming up on October 5th for innovation, where you can hear about amazing things that people did last year, which did include purchasing vehicles. So that is not a completely out of left field situation, but I will say it has to be realistic, feasible. Can you get it done in the amount of time? Is your funding feasible? And it should be tied to connecting families to food. So this could be like a shuttle service that you're doing. We had a library that served as a mobile meal site when with their purchase. So think it has to connect specifically to connecting children and families to food over the summer. So thinking about that through, it's not out of left field. If you want to keep workshopping it, please shoot me an email. We can have a private meeting and talk it at length. And Rachel, who is one of our grantees, says there's a lot to know when buying a vehicle.
So it's a good idea to attend our info session because we'll present stuff and be able to answer stuff a little bit more in depth. The next question was, did the food pantries provide produce boxes or meals for adults with innovation funds? So there were a lot of different innovation ideas, and some of them included food pantries providing donation boxes and libraries providing services and coordinating with them. So yeah, if you're in conversation with food pantries and they want to provide meals or services to adults, that would be a great option for innovation. So we are happy to again talk through all the logistics of how that would actually work. Rachel or Lisa, did either of you want to comment on that question?
No, that sounds about right. Yeah, and just a reminder that, you know, the food can't be used, or the money can't be used to purchase the food for adults, but it can be used for staff time to coordinate with the food bank. Any overhead costs for your library, what does that look like for you? So think about those options when you're creating your plan.
Another question about innovation. Can it include wellness, holistic programming that supports food, nutrition, and whole body health? So maybe, possibly. I would say that it needs to tie back to feeding more families and youth during the summer. So again, I would suggest visiting our innovation presentation and maybe even setting a meeting up with us, Catherine. We can workshop that idea and see how it fits, especially if you're already talking to partners. If you have a way that you see it fitting in your community, we're more than happy to consider and talk about it. And if you have these ideas you're unsure about, we would suggest you meet with us and check in with us before you go through the application process. That way you have an idea of what's going to be allowable. We have another question. If we're applying for a system, does each branch need to do a farm to table program or just one branch? So this would be per project. So if you're applying for your system, we would say you're only required to include one farm to summer element. But we would encourage you to do as much as you think your community would benefit from. Rachel or Lisa, do either of you want to comment on that?
ideal world, everyone's doing farm to summer every single day of summer. But we
Yeah.
understand that that doesn't actually, that's a little bit
Yeah.
of an ask. So we are asking, if you need to keep it simple, you can keep it simple. But at some point during your summer, there should be a farm to summer element, whether that's a program. I saw someone asking about trips to a farm. That still can be allowable. You just have to work it into your core program and make sure it still ties to your lunches. So whether that's you're promoting the lunches or they meet at the lunch and then go to the farm, we can workshop that more as well.
All right. And then a familiar question to our team is please define stipends and how it's different from wages or scholarships. So I'll ask if Lisa might have the exact definitions, but those are available in our allowables. If you think of it, really, this is going to be a conversation you would be having with your finance department or your HR department, whoever's going to be assisting you with the financial portion of that. Stipends are normally a set amount of money provided, whereas, you know, if you're paid wages, then it's going to be based on when you're working, how much you're working, and that's what we want to get to with the teens. And scholarships are provided for education. So there's some slight differences there. Really, it's going to be a conversation with your finance department. Lisa, do you have more to say on that might be a bit more helpful?
No, I will just say that not that many people do scholarships, so we do mention it, but it is certainly, if possible, especially with getting the funding earlier, it is certainly best in all ways if you can hire temporary staff and just actually employ the team.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And as you're going through your youth development, thinking about it, again, set a meeting up with us. We're happy to try and talk you through it. We have another question about spending money on take and makes, but can we use them for craft materials that are in-house? And that's yes. So the funds can be used for materials to create enrichment programming. So that could be a craft time during or, you know, following lunches. So we're just, you know, moving away from the take and make model. You know, normally kids, if they make a craft, they're going to probably take it with them. That's 100% okay. We totally understand that. It's the pre-packaged programs that are specifically made to take away. So because the waivers and everything have changed, unfortunately, it's not allowable. But we do see the research showing that families that spend time that have enrichment opportunities at these meal sites tend to stay more, and we see more kids get fed. If you have any more questions and want to go into detail, we're happy to try and do that in a meeting with you. And yes, it would include things like kids' toothbrushes for giveaways. So this was talking about this when we were talking about giveaways. So this would be anything that's given away for the purpose of incentivizing or giving away an item. So again, during programs, they might walk away with something that they made, like guacamole, like Lisa said, or, you know, a craft project they made, or, you know, a coloring page that they finished. But we don't want to be advertising like giveaways, because with state funds, you can't do that. So it needs to be programmatic and connected to the program. Rachel or Lisa, do you have anything to say on that to expand?
That was perfect.
Okay, great. So for presentations, what is the gray area? Kind of, it sounds like yay for animal conservation and healthy eating presentations and nay on puppet shows. There's not a specific like delineating line, like puppet shows are okay and magic shows aren't. Really, it's how you're thinking about planning and presenting the information and the enrichment services. So they shouldn't be, you know, programs to entertain the kids. They should be enrichment services that are, you know, elevating and supporting the program. So they might be healthy eating presentations, or it might be, you know, a bubble show talking about the science of bubbles, or about bubbles and how to clean your hands after you eat lunch. It's really just a way to ensure that the way we're planning and thinking about spending these funds is in line with the grant requirements. Lisa, did you want to say more on that?
Yeah, I think a puppet show can be very educational. So don't feel like you know, we're saying like these can't be fun presentations, or they can't feel like, oh wow, that was that was amazing. It's just kind of partly how you set that up with the person who you're bringing in to do the presentation. Like presenting it is not, you know, we're hiring you as a performer, but we're hiring you to help the kids, you know, want to come back to lunch every day and learn in the process.
Okay, so I have a question here. If you offer pop-up libraries at summer food sites, are giveaways for that still an unallowable expenditure? And the short answer is yes. Regardless if it's a meal site or a pop-up library, giveaways or incentives are always unallowable. There is a small exception in locations that are extremely rural. Some meal sponsors provide non-congregate meal options. This is a new trial option that was provided this last summer. So it's tentative. We don't know what that will look like. In those locations, when the only option is a meal to go, the only programming option is a program to go. So if you think you might qualify, if you have extremely rural locations, feel free to meet with us. We don't spend a lot of time on it because it isn't very prevalent. So you'd need to meet the rural definitions by USDA standards, and you'd need to have a meal sponsor that provides that. That's the one exception for the take and make format. And please talk to us if that's an idea or an option that you want to research more, and we are happy to go through all of those details with you.
And just for reference, what Kayla's mentioning, I just want to mention that we had 78 jurisdictions last year apply for the grant, and only one was non-congregate. So that should kind of show you how, like, it's very much a rare situation, but it's the one exception.
And we had a question. I had leftover take-home craft materials. Can I distribute them this year? I'm not sure if you're still Heather. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering if you're, oh yeah, you are. I see you right there. I don't know if you're talking about this summer or like currently right now. If you want to hang on to them for next summer when you're doing lunch at the library, yes, you can. And if you've already purchased them and you didn't have enough kids, you can hang on to them till next summer and use them in that way. That would be great. Get you a head start. Yes. Did you want to unmute yourself? Did you have something else?
So even though we can't give them away, we can because we already purchased them for this summer.
You wouldn't be able to create them as a giveaway pack. Is that what you're asking, Heather? Like you have the crafts to make a giveaway, a take-home kit, and you want to give them away next summer?
Yeah.
I would say no. Kayla,
I would say try to repurpose them for an in-person activity. Yeah, because the takeaway, you know what, Heather, we can go into this a little bit because there's a lot of nuance there, right? But because you've already spent the money, you've already purchased it, but next year takeaways, take and makes aren't allowed. So if you don't think that it's an option for you to transform it into an in-person activity, then we can discuss what options, but that would be my suggestion for your easiest streamline. Just take everything out of the bags, and they can be passive. It doesn't have to be somebody instructing them on the activity either, if the instructions are already there.
Because we do pop-up, we don't do programs at the meal sites.
Yeah, and the in-person programming would also still have to be for pop-ups as well. And I know I saw that somewhere else in the chat. So the no giveaways applies to pop-ups or lunch at the library. And as Kayla said, this could be very passive. It could be you have your table where you do your book giveaways, and then you have a table right next to you and the kids are doing a craft and they're just doing their thing. You don't necessarily have to be actively doing something with them. They just can't not do the craft or whatever it is on site. It can't just be in a bag that they pick up and walk away with. We want to make sure that they're engaging in the enrichment activity on site. Does that help?
Yes.
Yes, ish.
And if you go around, and yeah, we're happy to meet and like talk through all the little nuances and what options you might have for that.
Yeah, and
But
we'll
that's
have office hours, or we'll have you can set up a private meeting with us too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. I just want to make sure we answered it fully for you. Okay, so we have a question here. Will there be a clear delineation or definition of what constitutes enrichment versus entertainment? I think we went over that. So there's not a certain level of audience participation that's required. So it's how you're thinking about and presenting the performer for entertainment versus enrichment or presenter for enrichment. Okay, I think we answered this question. Is it $300 per day per site? And it's per site per day. It's not per system. So when you add up like all of your meal services days for all of your branches, that'll be your total number that you'll get for funding. And again, you can go in and look at your minimum after we're done here around 4:30. It should be available. So somebody asked, our visits to farms still covered? So yes, this could be your farm to summer element if you wanted to do a visit to a farm. If you review your funding and you say, wait, that's not enough for me to do my core program and my visit to the farms, we would encourage you to think about using the innovation grant and applying for that to do that bigger farm to summer event. So although we do require farm to summer, it doesn't have to be a huge visit to farms, but if that's something that you did last year and your community really enjoyed it, or you heard about it and thought it would be really interesting, the innovation grant might be a better option for you. In that format, you can request the amount of funds that you think you'll need to run that. You won't have to be relying on the outcomes for your funding on that. I'm just going through these. So
And I'm putting
yeah.
answers in, folks that asked in the chat, make sure
Yeah.
you see them there. I'm trying to get everything.
Thanks, Lisa. We have another question about funding. So does it adjust year to year depending on service? For example, due to renovations, we did not serve a lunch site for this year and next, but we may change back to a site after the renovation is finished. So funding will be based on your output, so it will be adjusted year to year. The hope is that you're not seeing huge dramatic drops, but you know, say that you served 3,000 meals last year, and this year you have 3 branches closed, so you're only going to serve 200. We can always discuss like how you want to work with your funding. So the funding formula is supposed to help everybody, but we do know that there's exceptions, there's emergencies, there's contingencies, there's things that happen that are out of our control sometimes. So we hope that we'll be able to have those discussions one-on-one when and as needed, but we're hoping that the fluctuations would be slight and hopefully you'd be receiving more money the more meals you're serving. And then Lisa notated that you could mark that location as a new site and get funding for it in that way. And Rachel wanted to know how a new location is determined. So you're a new site if you did not participate this year, summer 2023. If your branch did not participate or your library did not participate and you apply for the 2024 year, you are considered a new site. So if you had a branch that was a lunch site in 2022, waivers changed, they were not a lunch site this year, then they will be considered a new lunch site when you apply this upcoming year with them. Is that clear, Rachel or Lisa? Would you like to make it any more clear?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I
For
would
this
just say,
year, that makes the most sense.
yeah, if we don't have participation survey data on you, then that would be the way to do it.
Yep, then you're new. Does core program funding include funds for year-round staffing? So the way the funding will work is you won't apply with a budget. You'll apply, you'll receive your budget back like Lisa was talking about. And when you receive, or your amount, you'll receive your amount back and then you will complete your budget. So that's when you'll determine how much you want to spend on staffing, how much you're spending on crafts, how much you're spending on transportation, and then you'll send it back to us. So that amount will kind of be up to you. If you have a large scale idea for creating a team of lunch at the library outreach consultants, that would probably be something you'd want to, again, apply for innovation for. Innovation is meant to be going above and beyond the core program. So when you have those ideas, it's probably best to think about how it could fit into the innovation portion. So these are the minimum amounts, and you won't have an option to request funding in the core grant. If you have a large scale marketing campaign that you completed last year and you'd like to do that again, the best way is to apply through innovation. Innovation is the grant where you will request your funds. The core program you will receive based on your outputs. You can only receive innovation funding if you are a Lunch at the Library core program recipient. So you cannot apply for innovation without receiving the core funding.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Kayla, if you
Yes.
applied for something for innovation, say like a large scale marketing campaign, and you want to do that same marketing campaign again, please apply for the innovation grant again. We would love to see that in there.
Yes. And when we're talking about pop-up meal sites or community meal sites, we are talking about the location you are going to. So that might be a school. So you're bringing a pop-up library to a school, to a Boys and Girls Club, to a local park. Not the branch that's going out there, not the staff that's going out there. We'd like to know where in the community you're doing the work. And Lisa's answering a lot of these questions in the chat. I'm just answering them to make sure everyone hears it. Food can be purchased if it's programmatic, if it's part of the program, not to just be given away or to provide cookies or refreshments on the side. So guidance on providing food for babies and other children who cannot chew the sponsored meals. The program is geared towards children 0 to 18, but we don't always receive suitable food for the very young. So this would be a conversation, as Lisa says, to work with your meal provider. Another option might be to find another community partner in your area that might have options for you. You might want to reach out to WIC or First Five, looking for community partners that maybe are already doing this type of work. And we have heard more and more that we are seeing younger and younger kids at these lunch sites. So I've heard a few times like, we need to make sure we buy more board books, or man, I should have bought a high chair earlier. So we are seeing younger children. Unfortunately, at the state library, we don't have guidance or any sort of authority over what food you receive or don't receive. So that's going to be a conversation you want to have with your meal sponsor.
Can I chime in on that, Kayla?
Please do. Yes.
I just wanted to say that we did have a library that encountered this problem where they were having a lot of infants coming to their Lunch at the Library program, but the food wasn't, someone had to like really break it up so that the baby could grab it with their hands, right? Or they weren't really baby food. So they worked with their friends to get money to pay for baby foods. They also worked with local food banks to donate baby food. So it might take a little bit of like retooling or working with partners, maybe even reaching out to your First Five and seeing what context they might have in regards to getting some donated baby food. But it is something that we've heard in the past. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you, Rachel. Question, can we provide giveaways that are paid for by our own local funds? So you can, if you have your own funding, you can, provide books or giveaways in that way, but we don't want it included as a match on your grant report. So if something is not allowable by the state funds, we don't want it included on the grant report because it's not allowable. So if you're doing giveaways, that's great. We just don't want it on the budget. It's not something that we want to, look at in a financial aspect. It'd be great if you say we partnered with our First Five group and they came out and provided free baby food formula or something like that in your reporting, but please don't just don't include it on the budget portion. And if you have more questions about that, Lisa is a wealth of knowledge. She'll be happy to answer all of them for you. So looking at some examples, so like a safari encounter occurring prior to lunch service, would that still be allowed? So if you find that programming that runs right up until your lunch service works the best for your community, and then you run right into lunch because it keeps everyone there, those are considered enrichment activities. What you don't want to be doing is doing like a 9 o'clock program and then you have lunch from 12 to 1 and then a 4 o'clock program and counting those, because they're not really connected to the lunch service. So what we'd like to see and pay for and count is the enrichment services that are supporting and benefiting the lunch service. So we want to be bringing more families in, attracting them to the sites, creating a safe and inviting environment where families feel like, yeah, I can hang out here for a little while after lunch and talk or whatever it is. And that could mean that you're buying a pop-up tent for your visits to the local park, or water misters because it's so hot outside if you're even able to go outside. So it can be those types of items also that make the families feel like it's a safe and inviting environment. Looking for definition on new jurisdictions. Do you mean when we visit a brand new community meal site that we did not visit in previous years? So Lisa answered, no, this is new jurisdictions that you've never been a grantee before. So if you've never done lunch at the library before, you haven't done it this year, you're a new jurisdiction. And then if you're adding new pop-ups, you would be getting funding based on your plans. And then next summer you would get funding based on your outputs. And those outputs, we will let you know ahead of time, but you reported them on your survey if you were a grantee, and Rachel went over them when we were talking about the funding. So Michael said, if we use a popular performer group, we need to make sure it's information and educational. Yes. So we want to say, you know, this enrichment presenter, it can be music, it can be dance, it can be whatever works for your community. And so you can extend funding for youth development if we decide to provide snacks in the fall, winter, and spring. So yeah, you can include your request for youth development in your request to CLA. It could be a great way to make that happen. So youth development would also count for the CLA opportunity. And teens can be utilized to help librarians doing pop-up visits. Yes, make them carry the books back and forth from the vehicle. So teen interns or volunteers even. We have some that use volunteers. If you're unable to pay teens, maybe you could have a volunteer program. And they can help set up the tables and you know, set everything up for you and clean up. And then looks like there's some more clarification needed for funding. It may have gotten there, but Rachel, do you want to take this one? So they're just wanting to clarify 300 per pop-up site and 300 per pop-up visit.
Yeah, I think Lisa got that one in the chat, but yeah, so it's $300 per pop-up location. So say you have a location at the Boys and Girls Club and you have a location at the YMCA, that's $600, 300 and 300. But you go to that each of those locations just once. So that's one visit to the YMCA is $300 for the location and $300 for the visit. One visit to the Boys and Girls Club is $300 for the Boys and Girls Club location and $300 for the visit. Hopefully that made sense. And if you have questions, you're going to see the minimum amount in your participation survey on WiseHive after this as well, which hopefully will help clear things up.
All right, we have a question. Thank you, Rachel. If your library isn't big enough to host lunch at the library, can grant funds be used to rent space? And the short answer is yes, you can use your funds in the ways that you deem fit, as long as they're, you know, in line with our allowable costs. Many libraries become real creative with their space. We have kids sitting in the middle of the stacks eating, which I know can be jarring for some of us. It can be used to pay for cleaning services if your carpet's dirty after that. But yes, it can be used to rent. We would also you know, consider like if you have a community center that might want to partner or provide a discounted rate for you. If we want to expand or change our program model, is it possible to receive more funding in addition to what is based on our previous year's outputs? Like Lisa said, feel free to reach out with more specifics, but basically the core funding is based on your outputs. And if you're wanting to go above and beyond, we would recommend that you think about the innovation grant and how your plans might fit into that. But if you see your amount and you say, that's not even enough for us to run this program, please reach out to us so we can talk about how those funds might be spent. And like we said, this is our first year. We are still working everything out.
Yeah,
we did review how much people got last year in comparison with our funding, and we do see some some might have questions, but we feel overall it's equitable.
And I would just add to that, if you are expanding, there is a portion on the Lunch at the Library application where we will ask if there are any large changes to your plans from last year. And that's where you would say, oh, actually, we've done pop-ups for 5 years, but we want to all become meal sites, and we're going to become 5 library meal sites. We need to know that because your funding was all based on pop-ups, and we need now to plan, you're a new library meal site. So you need that new library meal site bump, and you need to be done at a library meal site amount. So don't ignore that if you're planning to make some expansions, and don't think that, well, I have to do what I've done every year. We want you to expand and grow. So we do have that option in there where you can tell us a little bit more about your plans. And then also, like Lisa said, set up a meeting. We'll talk your ears off. So please.
Thank you, Rachel. So we had a question about the stamps or the labels for the book. So we will have a template in our toolkit on our website for you to use. And it should include probably like the disclaimer and a logo, but we will help and provide that to you all. But you'll just want to think about how you want to, if you're doing books, to include either labels or some budget line to include that and the books. So is there a typical average number of participants, meaning families that are served? So Lisa said if you send her an email, she can send you an average across all, but on average, a busy urban location can serve as many as 70. A smaller location might only have 15 per day. If you would like more information, reach out to us, or if you know who your meal sponsor is, they might be the best source of details on how many they serve daily. Michael asked, what about halal or kosher concerns? Again, for the meals, we would refer you to your meal sponsor. Please continue to bring these up with us though, so we can bring these thoughts and concerns to our conversations at a state level. Looks like Lisa watched a USDA webinar that went into great detail on advice for meal sponsors. And I saw an article today, and it happened to be in Napa Valley, but it was about providing different types of meals for families like that. So Michael, we can always talk, and I would maybe check in with your meal sponsor to see if they have that as an option. Maybe ask them so many times that they make it an option. Okay.
And have real numbers to back it up. Like we have, five parents asked yesterday about gluten-free, like, show it. It's not just, I thought this might come up, but this did come up, and there's real people being affected by these things. Advocate. It's not easy though.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Would we approach a potential community partner like the FFA at the local high school that has a garden program, or would we approach someone at CLA? Sonia asked this question. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm not sure. Rachel or Lisa, do you have a more clear understanding? I'm not sure if this is for meals or for programming.
Yeah, so if your local FFA, that sounds like for farm to summer. Sonia, if you're still on the call, would you mind taking the mic and just giving us a little more feedback on what this was entailing?
Sorry, the question was already answered from someone within our organization already answered the question for me.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Sure. But yeah, you could always talk to us about it. We're happy to help. Any restrictions on book giveaways? Yes, don't do them. So no book giveaways, but you can provide books to families for home libraries. So we are getting more specific where it does need to connect to your summer reading program or literacy. But we do need to take out that giveaway connotation. Can the funding statement be printed on a bookmark that's inserted into each book going home? Would that satisfy the requirement? So we want it in a lasting way. So I know this might sound like a really extreme example, but if you give away books to kids and then they turn around and they go sell them on Amazon and they're making money, that could be a problem, right? So that'd be a gift of public funds. I know that sounds extreme, and we know that would never ever happen. But putting a donation sticker on the books is a way that we can notate that this isn't a giveaway. It's part of a programmatic element for lunch at the library. And it can be on the inside cover, it can be on the back cover. One of my pet peeves is when a sticker is over like a picture or something. So place it where it's comfortable for you. Volunteers or teens could do that. And again, we'll provide the template. Oh, somebody said they purchased a remote controlled cooler for water and otter pops. That sounds super cooling for these hot days. Is the after school partner project specific to school age children? Or 0 to 18. So yes, that should be 0 to 18, same as us. Can you provide with stamp or provide when we can purchase? So we will provide that label for the books. Spanish and English bilingual, please. Yes. If you have other language needs, let us know. I can't promise anything, but if you do have another language that you normally print your library stuff in, let us know and we can try and work on it. Hopefully, you know, at one point be able to get more than just 2 languages. Michael, it sounds like Lisa answered your question, so I'm going to just try and keep going through this because I see we still have lots of questions. Okay, so would it be an issue if we initially had a partnership with the school district, but before lunch launches, they drop out, we need to pivot? That's not a problem. I mean, it would be a problem. You'd be, you know, like probably like, oh no, what do I do? But for us, we understand things can change between now, September, and like June next summer. So please reach out if like something big changes, you aren't able, you know, you're having a hard time pivoting or having a hard time connecting with your meal sponsor. We're here to help you with those conversations as well. So Rachel from Sonoma points out that be prepared for pop-up sites to close without notice. Good options to have when this happens, but it'll all work out in the end. We did notice this a lot with the change in waivers from last summer to this summer. Hopefully we don't see as much of that happen, but if things change, feel free to reach out. So this year you will give us our core budget based on the number of meal sites and pop-up sites. So that's the core funding. Remember that innovation is on top of that. So basically the more you make happen, the more funding you'll get. I'm just going through all the rest of these questions. Looks like we got some more math here for our core program budget. Yes. Looks like you're correct. So 3 boys and girls and 1 YMCA. You have 4 visits there, plus your 2 different locations. So can we also provide school readiness items with the funds, like school supplies, physical fitness items to encourage physical movement after lunch? So we can't provide any giveaways. So if you're asking about giving away school supplies, then no, but you could purchase school readiness supplies and have them, you know, provided so kids can use them after lunch and they leave them. Either if you're at a pop-up location, then you pack them up and take them back to the library, or maybe you set them out before lunch and kids can use them before, during, and after lunch. But they can't be given away. Okay.
One other thing that
Yes.
could be an option is everyone's, you know, given a journal and we all learn how to write poetry together and you write a poem in the journal. That might make sense, but we can't just give away journals just because we know that kids need, even though we know they need them, we know the kids need notebooks for the school year. And hopefully that makes sense.
Rachel,
Yeah.
In the response to Yvette's question, told about the school supplies program that they did where they did the shopping. And I know that Lodi has done something similar where the kids, you know, come up and choose out something after their meal. So can you just speak to that? Is that considered programmatic?
I'd say that's a case-by-case basis, and we'd need to kind of discuss that at length with the grantee and kind of really hear how that works into their program. Because again, we don't want to just be giving it away, but I believe Rachel, if you want to, Rachel, when she did it, talked about budgeting and how to budget your money, what buying something would imply, all of that information, instead of just having a school supplies drive. that sound right, Rachel?
Yeah, we had our interns create a shop, and they had the different school supplies. Anyone who wants to hear more about this, I could go on and on, but basically we created a little store environment where the kids had to learn about budgeting, and we had to tell them, okay, so you have $40. We gave them these little funny money bucks that we had printed, and they had to go through each, their little shopping list and say like, okay, do I need every item, or do I only want one of each? What do I want to do? And then I need to save some of this because at the end I'm going to be able to borrow, or actually rent art supplies to decorate my backpack. And then I need to be able to rent the use of the button maker to make my little zipper pull. And I only get 2 of those. So if I get every single school supply, I can only get 2 buttons. But if I don't get the pencil, maybe I can get 3 buttons. So they had to sit there and think about budgeting and really talk to their parents and like their siblings, like, well, if I get 3 pencils and you get 6 buttons, and just kind of that.
Cute.
They were really doing a shopping activity. That's what it was meant to be.
Great. Thanks
Thank
for taking the mic, Rachel. I appreciate it. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, so that's the end of our written questions. I do want to open it up. We have, about 8 more minutes. If anyone wants to raise their hand, if you had a question, you just like couldn't figure out how to type and you want to talk it out, I want to just open the floor if you guys have any questions.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and then
Go
you
ahead.
can ask that question again, just in case that
Yeah.
makes people intimidated. Okay, so we're gonna stop the recording, but if you have more questions, please stay